Bolt your windows. Lock your doors. Check your closets. Look under your bed. And then prepare yourself. For it's another episode of Dark Knight of the Podcast.
If God had a name, what would it be, and would you call it to his face? If you were faced with him in all his golden glory, what would you ask if he had just one question? And yeah, God is great.
Yeah.
What if God was one of us?
Just a slob like one of us. Whatever happened to this curly-haired broad to begin with?
Joan Osborne, man. I don't know. Do you need anything else when you got that one in your repertoire?
Oh, yeah.
I fucking love that song. Yeah. Only song I know that intentionally used the lyric, yeah. It's literally 5 consecutive yeahs. That is a lot to throw into a song and say that's good lyricism, but here we are. Troy, how do you feel about religious horror? I'm just throwing it at you. Religious horror, movies that have religious Christian themes running through them. I'm curious to think where this sits on your docket.
Wow, right out of the gate with the tough one. Okay, so straightforward, I'm not a religious person. So I think a lot of religious horror, the aspects of it are probably lost on me because I've never been a person of extreme faith in that regard. I have no religious affiliation. I never went to church as a kid. I do remember like one time the neighborhood kids inviting me to vacation Bible school during the during the summer, and it was like a week. And like when I was there, like the priests or whatever were like really adamant about like getting you to join the church and getting baptized. So in my little like 5th grade mind, I thought, oh my God, I want to get baptized. That sounds so cool. So I went home and told my mom about it. I was going to get baptized that Saturday. And she let me have my little moment of like basking in this idea of baptism. But then the next day she came to me and she said, absolutely not, Troy. I'm not allowing you to do this because you are way too young to understand what it fully means. So 10 years down the line, when you're old enough to understand religion and all the complications and implications that come with baptism, if you want to do it, go for it. But I'm not going to let you do it now. And you know what? To this day, I respect the fuck out of her for it. But with that said, a lot of the religious horror, a lot of the elements of the religious horror films that might be horrifying or disturbing to people of faith are kind of lost on me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I'm happy you said that because that really resonates. I grew up, I'm the complete opposite. I grew up in a strict Irish Catholic household and like with very strict Catholic rules, and I went to private school and I was baptized and I went through all of the shtick. I was an altar boy. And I carried that with me like into my early 20s. Like I didn't let it go right away. Even when I came out, I still tried to both be gay and Catholic, and it was really, really tough. Honestly, it was it was very self-destructive, And so finally, like come into realization about how I feel about religion in general. Very much aligned with where you are. And I'm not personally a religious person. I'm not necessarily scared by the idea of like a deity, but there are themes that run through Christianity specifically, but religion in general. There are a lot of themes that I still find myself responding to, even though I don't necessarily believe it. It's so ingrained in me that there's certain things I still react to. I still, if I go to church, I have to go through all of the blessings, and I have to be able to say everything and recite all of the Psalms. Like I know all of that still. I still like feel moved to get communion, and I'm still very frightened by the concept of both like religion and when it's used as a weapon, how dangerous it can be. because I've seen it, I've experienced it firsthand. But I'm also just terrified of some of the ideas that exist that are just so powerful and represent such forces of evil that you can't really shake it. You're still always going to have that fear embedded in you. When you grow up with that and you are exposed to that, even if you proclaim, I don't believe in this, films like The Exorcist, Stigmata, movies like that, they impact me. They do. And so I have to say, like, coming to this movie and realizing how religious this film is, the themes that run through it, I got really excited because I had never seen this film before. And same applies to you, right?
Correct. And, while I can sit there and say that I'm not a religious person and some of this stuff does not have an effect on me as it would maybe somebody who has grown up in the church, I will say, I mean, I think as a citizen, as a human being, we all, whether we want to admit it or not, are influenced in some regards by religion, whatever religion that may be, based on where we are living, right? Religion has infiltrated so many aspects of our daily lives that I don't even think we are cognizant of it. So while you sit there and say, "Oh, I'm not a religious person, I'm an atheist," great, great, but society has embedded so many aspects from the Bible, the Quran, whatever you want to say, that it is embedded in your daily life, whether you realize it or not. So there are some things, yes, that are quite disturbing. I mean, I might not be religious, but you bet your bottom ass that I sit there and think about what does happen after we die. What if there is a more powerful being, and here all my life I've just ignored it. But I can't say that. I can't honestly say that religion has not influenced me at some point or in any aspect of my life, because I think it has all of us. I mean, just look at like even our constitution and our laws, things like that aren't supposed to be influenced by religion, but very much have been, right?
And again, it's really hard to shake that because there's such a populace that's still caught up in honestly, I want to use a nice term like fascination that we have with Christianity and with religion in general. There's people that can't shake it. Even if they question it, they can't shake their beliefs.
And that's great. I would never disparage someone for their religious beliefs at all. The issue is when they turn around and use them, as you hinted at, for nefarious purposes or hurtful purposes, or try to or for trying to crush the rights of somebody else. That's when I have a huge issue with religion. And I think as we transition into the film that we're going to talk about, which is, yes, you're correct, I have never seen this film, God told me to, a film by Larry Cohen, who, from his catalog of films, I think this one stands out quite a bit, don't you? I mean, he's done like It's Alive, and I mean, of his catalogs of film, I think this is the glaring one that stands out as being something completely different.
I am really surprised, truly impressed that he is the director of this film. Not saying that I don't enjoy his other films. I love The Stuff. Correct me. Isn't he the director of The Stuff? Am I right in saying that? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'm a huge fan of that movie, but his films overall have a certain level of, and I say this respectfully, but almost like schlockiness, or it's a parody of certain things. There's a cartoonish element to a lot of his movies, a larger than life element, and this film is so much drier and more rooted in the scary elements of reality, up until the second half, at least. But at first, this movie feels very dry, very bleak, very desperate. And yeah, it's a completely different style approach for him as a director, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, he has a lot in common with a director like Frank Henenlotter that we covered last week with Basket Case. Sort of those gritty, schlocky type films. I mean, he did Maniac Cop. Larry Cohen went on to do Maniac Cop. I mean, he's done a lot of those films that have definitely made an impact in the genre. But looking at this, it's really hard to believe that he is the same director. But I mean, I don't want to get on this long stretched out conversation about religion, because I think that there's so much that we're going to hit on within this film that we should probably just get into it and stop the listeners, because guys, if you haven't seen God Told Me To, which I think this is probably a little bit of an obscure title, one of the more obscure titles that we've covered. We've covered some really obscure stuff, and this one's probably somewhere towards that level. If you've never seen this film, it's streaming. I would say check it out before listening to this episode and enlighten yourself with it, because it is quite a quite something to take in. And yeah, I mean, whew.
This is a film that does a lot of things very, very right and does a couple things very wrong. And I'm going to go into it saying that, after viewing this for my first time, and I love when you and I talk about movies we haven't seen before, because there's an excitement to it. And I'm feeling that with this movie. But going into this, I was really impressed. I was really surprised by some of the themes and some of the ideas, some of the concepts, some of the material that this movie, for a late 70s piece of cinema, was choosing to tackle, and how it was choosing to address it. I think this film has some cojones, and even in the areas where it does falter, because there are a few, I respect this movie for just having the balls to just address religious topics with such a blunt opinion on the matter.
Yeah, I will say, I'll put this out there. I will say, I did not love this movie. Please don't mistake my seemingly excited tone and whatnot for that. I fucking love this movie and I adored this movie. I actually felt like this movie was a chore to get through a lot of the time. We have covered films where we've talked about police procedurals kind of drowning the rest of the plot, and I think this is a perfect example of that. There are so many scenes of police things going on that I could give a shit less about. I really found myself getting bored. But with that said, when the film hits, it hits, and I think something I want to get right into it with this opening scene. Okay, so we get some nice, some very haunting chanting choir type music. The opening credits are pretty stylistic. We have like smoke going through as this chanting and stuff is playing the opening credits. But then we cut to the film takes place. We're back in New York City, Roger. The film takes place in New York City. We were just in New York City last week. We didn't even have to pack our bags, Roger.
I know. I thought about that right away. I was like, oh gosh, this is another film that really, I mean, if we're going to talk about movies that use New York City to their advantage, the moments that work in this movie work because you are seeing iconic buildings set within an active city. It uses New York very well.
Yes. Perhaps not as well as Basket Case, but still, you definitely recognize many of the landmarks that this film implements into its setting. But okay, so right away we're just there. We're in downtown New York City. People going about their daily lives on their lunch breaks. It's just a typical day, just like many of these other days where something like a mass shooting happens. People are going about their daily lives when all of a sudden this poor man that's riding his bike is shot and falls to the ground, and people are like, what the hell just happened? And then they all realize that these people are being shot by a sniper mass shooter that is perched up on top of a building on a water tower. This scene, Roger, I want to say, oh, wow. I think this scene probably has a bigger impact on the audience now than it did then. Then, Roger, mass shootings weren't really a thing. I feel like this film is definitely playing homage with this opening scene to the 1966 University of Texas tower shooting perpetrated by Charles Whitman. I don't know if you remember hearing about that. He climbed the tower on the University of Texas campus in Austin and shot, I think, like 15 or 16 students. I feel like this was 1976, so this was a decade later. Still, not a lot of mass shootings had happened between that time and the time that this film came out. So while I feel like this was bold at the time to show this mass shooting, watching it now hits a little bit different. Wouldn't you say so?
Man, I went into this film blind. I didn't really read anything other than snippets I had seen occasionally pop up on social media, but I really was just intrigued by the title. So when I came into this, I really didn't know what to anticipate. And when it first starts happening, when the first person is shot, there's a hokey 70s-esque quality to it. You're like, oh, is this guy having an aneurysm? Like, what's happening? The guy falls over on the bike. And then when you start to connect what's happening, even though there is this kind of exaggerated 70s element to some of these moments, some of these people, when they're dropping, it's very big, it's very just hokey. It doesn't matter, because the way this scenario is handled is really, I think, quite masterful. And it becomes, as it progresses, more and more chilling. And I'm sure, yeah, when they made it back then, I'm sure it was ballsy for that time, but there was a separation from reality, I think, because you're right, these things rarely happened. Now, man, you watch this and it's chilling. Like, there is a almost like it hits like in the pit of your stomach. You almost feel like you're watching something wrong, like you're watching them make something that you're not supposed to even watch for entertainment value, because it's so shockingly real. The fact that you just start to see these aerial shots of people running across the streets, the panic when this movie hits panic, when this movie hits chaos, it shines. And these moments become truly, truly wonderful. Leading up to this whole shot atop this water tower, introducing this character, I mean, you get some amazing visuals and a phenomenal setup for the film.
A great setup. I this opening is shocking. I feel like it opens the film very strongly. I personally don't think the film ever hits this stride again, but this opening is brilliant. I literally had chills down my spine watching it, because it's something that, unfortunately, we as Americans see play out way too often. I mean, here I am in Vegas, the location of the worst mass shooting in American history took place 2 miles down the road from me. So like, it's watching this is horrifying, and these people react. You're right. It's just so random. He's not really targeting anybody. He's just aiming the rifle and shooting, and whoever he hits, that's who unfortunately is dead. But yeah, we cut to then a news broadcast, which is Roger. Fuck, I didn't know he was. It's the camp owner from Sleepaway Camp. He's the police captain.
Let me say right now, he is, in my opinion, the standout in this film. And one of the reasons this opening works so well, it's not just the shooting. The whole moment where you have like the shot pulling back and revealing the sniper atop that water tower and becoming that very broad, wide shot, you start to see that this is really a visually impressive film at times. They play with a lot of focus racking. There's a lot of movement. This is not a still movie. This is almost always moving. So that's impressive for the time, in my opinion. But once you start to meet some of these characters, I do feel a lot of the acting is actually quite good, especially during dramatic moments. And this guy, this news report, I feel like I'm watching something real. Like, the way this is addressed, I feel like I'm actually watching newsreel following a shooting. It's really well handled.
Yeah, I agree. There's something very raw and natural about his delivery, but I just could not shake from my mind. Oh my God, that's Mel from Sleepaway Camp. But he's basically, yeah, he's just reciting what happened. Hey, at noon, somebody climbed up on the water tower, opened fire. Our police officers are on scene. One of our officers has taken it upon himself to climb the tower to try to confront the guy. And we cut to who becomes our main protagonist, who is in the movie. I would say 99% of the shots is Peter Nicholas. He is our main guy that we follow through the film. And you know what? I'm fine with that. He's engaging, charismatic, charming. He has this sense of mystery about him in some regards. And he makes, at least for me, he makes for a really intriguing protagonist.
The way they handle this character, I think, is right off the bat, they make some really smart choices. And I mean, first is just casting Tony LuBianco in this role. He is quite good in this role, and he plays with all of the emotions and all of the layers that come with it, and there are plenty, at times almost too many. But really, he is the rock throughout this film. He keeps it rooted in reality, even when aspects of the movie are starting to really drift into weird territories. And starting with this opening moment, one of the reasons this whole sequence works so well is because they use it to introduce him in a very positive light. Immediately, when he's introduced, he has a very authoritative presence. He wants to engage the sniper and actually try to talk him down. They're sending a helicopter up to shoot the guy, and he's like, no, we've got to figure out why this guy is doing this. We have to actually understand the motivation. He's making really good choices to the point where he climbs up that ladder and he starts engaging the sniper. And the sniper is also honestly phenomenal. Like, there is this extremely well handled exchange of dialogue between these two men that I found just horrifying. I think that the mentality behind the sniper as he delivers his dialogue, the sense of peace and calm, the fact that he's not at all affected by what he's doing, it sets a great tone for what's to come.
I agree. The casualness of his responses to Peter, who was asking him, "Hey, what's your name? Where are you from?" And Peter is actually giving him a lot of background. He's like, "Hey," Peter tells him, "Hey, I graduated from, this particular college. I do this, I do that. What about you?" And the calmness, just the nonchalantness that Harold Gorman is the sniper's name, that Harold responds with is chilling. Here he's blowing away innocent people down below, but he can have this just very almost nonchalant, boyish conversation with this guy. Although you cannot tell me that this guy is 22 years old. He looks like he's about 49. I'm sorry.
When I looked at this guy, and this is me just kind of going there, I actually almost thought this guy may be like a gay man with AIDS, like presented. And then I thought the era was like maybe a little too early for that, but he's a very specific look to him, does he not?
Yes, definitely. He would be something you would see on like one of those, you know, leather magazines from the early 80s, in seedy gay porn shops. The mustache, the curly hair, his voice also, I'm not making judgment, but his voice is very effeminate, especially compared to Peter. So I had the same thought. I wonder if this is a gay gentleman, because they do kind of play with maybe not homosexual themes in this film, but they almost touch on them. But yeah, I just found this interaction very chilling until Peter finally asks him, what can I tell people? Like, people are going to want to know, like, why did you do this? And Harold says, well, if I tell you, you got to keep a secret. And Peter's like, well, I don't know if I can do that, but people are going to want to know. And he responds, God told me to. And then he stands up and he literally jumps to his death off of the fucking water tower. And this shot of him going off of this water tower, phenomenal. It looks real. We've discussed plenty of movies where somebody falls off a balcony or jumps and you can totally tell it's a dummy. This looks amazing, especially for the budget of this film. What they pulled off in this opening is truly, truly breathtaking.
When they wrap up this moment, it leaves you wanting so much more, in the sense of like, I am eager to bring it on with the rest of this film, because this whole sequence all the way through to that exact moment you're talking about where he fucking dives off the top of that fucking water tower, that whole moment you're on the edge of your seat. There's another aspect I want to acknowledge, and it's Mrs. Gorman, the mother. They have a moment where they're interviewing this boy, quote unquote, but this young man's mother. And again, for the era, the acting from this woman, the panic, she doesn't sound like she's coming from a fake or theatrical place. She actually sounds like a panicked, real life individual, and it's really, again, chilling watching this woman as she's trying to defend her son, saying he would never do something like this. And she drops a few little hints about what's to come, but she's making it clear. She's like, my son has never, ever been the type of person to even have encounters with people. This makes no sense.
Yeah, she claims that she was told there's no way he could shoot that many people and get to have that good of aim. I've been told that there's no way from that distance he could have killed that many people. My boy would not do that. He doesn't hang around with those types of people. And that does come back into play, because after Harold jumps, we get the body floating through the air before it hits the ground. Peter wakes up from a nightmare. He's now in his bed in his small little studio apartment with his girlfriend, Casey. She is obviously used to this, because she's like, you have another dream. She's like, you know what? It's time someone else plays the hero. We find out, and I love this because it just hit kind of home. She's a substitute teacher, Roger, so she has to stop and call to find out what school she's been assigned to that day. She finds out it's in the Bronx, and she says, she gets up, she's like, you know what, I could use a cop to escort me to this school. But there's this really interesting conversation they have, because Peter obviously is still hung up on this sniper, and he's like, I just don't understand how his aim could have been so accurate. It's almost like someone was guiding his hand.
Ooh, it's something creepy that is going to come back into play the way he mentions this, and it definitely does.
But I also love her response. She says, "Well, you know what? Crazy people are often blessed with inhumane strength in certain situations."
It's worth noting that Casey was actually seen during that opening. They cut to her multiple times as she is wandering through the city, and she's actually seeing the shooting happening. So, the fact that you connect her, you really think Casey is going to be a pivotal character, and to a certain extent, she is. But I found it surprising how she just drops off for chunks of the film to come. I really like her character. I really like how she's introduced here. I think she's endearing. I think their banter back and forth is charming. And you're really liking these two characters. Like, right off the bat, you're liking these two characters quite a bit, which is setting you up for something to come here that I think is really a genius character arc, and something really interesting we'll explore in a moment. But that's worth noting. Like, right off the bat, I think Casey is just charming and so well played, so well acted. She's lovely.
She is. And I didn't notice the first time I watched it. I didn't notice that she was actually on the streets of New York until the second time. But you were right. She is prominently shown several times as the shots start to ring out. So she has like firsthand experience too with the trauma, because she could have been hit. He's shaving, he's getting ready to go, and he tells her at that moment he's going to drive out to see Martha. She gets a little hostile about it, and she says, "You know what? You need to realize she needs to realize it's our decision, not hers. In New York City now, anybody can get a divorce." And he's kind of like stunned to silence, and she walks away a little bit perturbed. And I really like how they handle this moment, because I think in a lot of other films, like, Casey would be his mistress, right? Like, she would be his mistress. His wife doesn't know about it. It's kind of a secret little affair he's having. His poor, his poor wife, who's, playing the traditional, dutiful wife who's been mistreated. She's at home by herself, not even knowing what her husband's up to. They don't go that route here. And in fact, like, we cut to him at his house, or Martha's house, and she very much is aware of that he's seeing this other girl. And in fact, her very first line of dialogue is, "Why don't you be honest with her? Why are you letting her think that I'm the one that's standing in your guys' way?" I have to stop and acknowledge that Sandy Dennis plays Martha, and Sandy Dennis is a national treasure. I fucking love Sandy Dennis. She's an Oscar-winning actress. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Seeing her in this role, even though it's small, she brings so many little quirks to it, and that's one thing Sandy Dennis did so well with every character she ever played. If you're going back to Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, she adds so many little character quirks to her character that it just makes them so endearing and so believable and lived in.
Oh yeah, I really feel this woman's story. Like, the moment you see her, you know, just by looking in her eyes, you're like, oh fuck, like this is a rough situation. And what an interesting decision to make when you're talking about flawed protagonists. Peter is running up at the top of the list, because you start off with such like a strong positive note, an endearing note between these two characters, and then you are thrown out of nowhere the idea that he is having an affair and his wife is aware, and these two women are just like dealing with it, and he's refusing to address it. And it is really just a strong choice to make for this character dynamic. I really do like whenever you're kind of touching on this aspect of Peter's life, the story between these three. I like everything they're bringing to the table. You get some great performances. Sandy Dennis fucking rocking out this role. She's given almost a Margaret White kind of vibe at times. Did you ever look at her opposite Casey and think this is very much like a Sissy Spacek, like back and forth almost Piper Laurie situation? Yeah.
But what I like about the whole scenario is that, you know, it does then lend us to understand that Peter is not the, as you mentioned, he's not the most sympathetic character that we might have painted him to be from the opening scene when he's trying to talk this sniper down. What he's doing here is he's playing literally two women, and it's him because he is so religious, as she mentions. She's like, does Casey know you go to mass every morning? Does she know that you go to confession, that you cry at confession? Does she know all this? It is literally his ties to religion, his strong connection to his faith that is preventing him from getting a divorce. It's not Martha. Martha tells him, I will do whatever you want. It is unfair to this girl. I actually feel sorry for her, and I feel sorry for you. So you find out that Peter is the one that is allowing Casey to think that it's Martha who's refusing to get the divorce when it's really him.
Oh, I mean, it is, again, such an interesting dynamic. And each one of these characters is so well played and so just nuanced. Everyone here is bringing their A game. And so it's really going to set up for a really great storyline for these three. We are going to learn a lot more about Peter here in a bit, though, that really, I think, distracts away what is from a cool story arc. I mean,
I almost, Roger, and I hate to say this because I mean, I'm a horror. We have a horror podcast. That's what we do. But I almost feel like I would have preferred just a drama with the dynamics of these three, something like I don't know, a Kramer versus Kramer or a Network or something like that, where I just want to watch this. I just want a family drama with these three. Fuck all this other stuff that becomes nonsense. I wanted to see more with these three. I really could have. I would have been fine if this was just a family drama about this man struggling with his religious background and trying to juggle his mistress and his wife. I found that to be some of the more interesting parts of the film. And you can tell he still really cares about her because before he leaves, he's like, do you need anything? And she's like, no, except you just want everything to stay the same, don't you? But what are you going to do when that girl finds out? And he's quiet. He can't respond. He just gives her a kiss and then he leaves. And when he leaves, where does he go, Roger? He goes to church to pray in front of the statue, probably to confess.
the fact that he ignores her to her face it's so offensive. And they're throwing something with this character, Peter. They're throwing something at you that completely contrasts all of the likability up until this point. And he's so cold, and he's so disconnected from her just spilling herself to him. She is just literally just telling him straightforward. You can tell they've had this conversation a million times. She is not filtered. She is just telling him straight out the facts of the matter, and he just refuses to even answer her. It's insulting. It's insulting.
And doesn't she seem just so exhausted by it all?
Oh my God, this poor woman.
She's over it. Like, she's just over it. Now, after he goes to church, we do cut to a hospital where Peter goes to see this man that's in the hospital bed. And when he goes in the room, even the other officer's like, hey man, this isn't your jurisdiction. But he ignores him because he apparently knows this guy. He calls him by his name, John. John is in like this plastic bubble. The other detective's like, yeah, his wife said that he was reading the newspaper and then he went down to the supermarket and just started stabbing people. So Peter goes up to John and whispers to him, he's like, John, why did you do it? And within the plastic bubble, what do you think John's response is?
God told me to.
And then he dies.
I wish we could have seen that fucking supermarket stabbing.
Okay, Roger, thank you. Here's the thing. I have a problem with this film. It opens with a bang, literally, but we never see any of these supposed murders. I mean, there's a man coming up that blew away his whole family. We don't see that. The only other murder we really see is by somebody who is not even being commanded by God to do anything. I really wish the film would have given us more scenes of these people actually becoming unhinged. I guess we get the scene at the parade coming up, but it's so like meh that it doesn't really register with me. Like I want to see like just a family man just sitting there and the process that goes into how this particular being is commanding them to do anything. We get it with sort of with the opening scene, but then really never again. Never again.
This is a film that I could handle a remake of this, and I would like them to just take off the kids' gloves and get fucking wild with it. Because yeah, there are some ideas here that would just be absolutely on camera. I don't know. You know, we're talking about like the one guy, the story that's going to come up. I mean, holy shit, is that visceral? But yes, I really definitely wanted to see this supermarket sequence. It's still a very creepy moment. I'm still hooked at this point. When this guy delivers this line, I'm like, God, I wish they were showing it, but I'm still very invested. But you're right. There are several scenes here that are needing that those big moments are what sell this movie.
But I also feel like the film starts out going at a bullet train pace. Like we're going from one extreme scene to the other, but then at some point it just kind of fizzles out. And I think that's another problem I have with the film, because we go from this man who just stabbed a bunch of people in the supermarket saying God told him to and choking and dying. Now we cut to a police station where Officer Jordan gets a call from this mysterious man. We see who it is. Like they're not trying to like not show us who this man is. And he comes back into play, calling from a payphone to tell him that at the parade, they're having their St. Patrick's Day parade that day. 5 more are going to die by the hands of one of their own because he has willed it to be. Peter gets on the other line, tries to get more information from the guy. And he's like, just be prepared. 5 more people are going to die. And he hangs up.
I like this moment immediately following here, Troy, where he's like, we got to get everybody down to the parade. It gets really, really frantic. It really starts to pick up for a second. I said this earlier, but this film's strongest moments are when there is chaos, when there is a lack of control. And building up to this parade moment, truthfully, like, I love this moment. I know you said you think it's not, maybe it's kind of meh, but maybe I was too stoned. I don't know. When I watch the sequence, I can't think of a film that's captured a parade, first of all, on such a grand scale, looking so believable with so many people. It's a huge sequence.
It is. I'm assuming they must have gotten permission to film actually during the real parade. That's all I can say. There's no way the film, looking at it, what its budget was able to just do this parade for this film. I'm assuming they got permission to film this scene during an actual parade. I guess I what I mean by it being mez, there's a lot of buildup to kind of little payoff. You know, yes, Peter's rushing around. He's telling all the other officers to get down to the parade. He's even calling the chief, Mel from Sleepaway Camp, to tell him if they can cancel the parade. He's like, "No, we can't cancel the parade. What are you stupid? The Irish depend on this." And so we get this long sequence of the parade, and I guess it's building some tension because we are expecting something to happen. So the camera keeps shifting to different groups of people, different groups of police officers, focusing on different police officers. And it goes on for quite a while before finally the one, played by Andy Kaufman of all fucking people, pulls out his gun and like literally fires at the crowd. And he shoots like one guy, then shoots another one before one of the cops just comes and shoots him. So I'm saying like it was a huge buildup to not a lot of carnage, if that makes sense.
Oh, but the buildup to it, I mean, it is a lot of buildup, but it is expertly handled. I mean, it's fast cuts. You get all these shots of just girls in the parade. Like, you're seeing how many people there are. You're seeing the mayor, and it's this big fucking to-do. And so when it happens, when he takes out the gun, I'll agree with you that it's not as big as the first one because they're able to subdue this guy in time, is basically what happens. But even when the cops start running in on him and grabbing him by the wrist, and he has a smile on his face as he's firing up into the sky, shoots one of the cops in the chest, shoots one in the stomach, he's still taking them out. Like, he is unfazed by the fact that these guys are trying to mob him to the ground until finally one of them shoots him. I do wish it would have maybe hit a bit more of a fever pitch after all that build up. But even when that chaos starts to hit and everyone's running and crisscrossing, and you see the girls in the different girls in the costumes running around and everything, it's just I don't know. It really worked for me. But I hear what you're saying. I would have liked maybe a bigger reveal.
And I guess it's just kind of meh for me because I feel like this is the point for me where the film starts to fizzle out. Everything that comes after this, with a few little tiny peaks, this is the moment that the film fizzles out for me. Because, well, as of course, Peter rushes to the guy as he's on the ground dying, and Peter hears his last words, which are, "God told me to." And now it launches Roger into full-fledged police procedural. I mean, Peter, we are subjected to several scenes of Peter doing his police sleuthing. He's interviewing people. He talks to one of the guys that was riding the bus or whatever with this guy who opened fire, and he asks him, "Hey, did you see him talk to anybody?" And he's like, "Yeah, he kind of was talking to somebody with long hair." He then interviews the doorman at the building, that the water tower that the first sniper was on. He asks him, "Do you remember Howard Gorman talking to anybody?" He's like, "You know what? Now that I think about it, he was talking to this guy with." Couldn't tell if it was a guy or a girl with long blonde hair. I couldn't even really make out the facial features. He also talks to a shopkeeper that was next, that saw Howard Gorman that day. He's like, yeah, he was talking to that guy with long hair, but his face was indistinguishable. I couldn't even really see anything of it. And then we question that old broad again, Mrs. Gorman. Peter asks her, "Did your friend talk to any long-haired individuals?" She's like, "No, he wouldn't." And it just brought me back to all those stereotypes in the '80s, early '80s about people with long hair being like, "Ooh, you can't hang around people with long hair; they're druggies or whatever." Because everyone in this film acts like if you have long hair, you're an abomination of society. Because she's like, my Bernard would never hang around somebody like that, except, and that's why it made it more apparent when he started hanging around this long-haired guy, and his name was Bernard Phillips. Yeah, Bernard Phillips. So she remembers the name Bernard Phillips.
That he is a barefooted individual. I mean, I guess this guy just walks around barefoot. She's like, "Who would walk around New York in bare feet?" So, like, I like this broad. If this sequence, Troy, was a standalone sequence like this and it didn't go back to police procedural again, I'd say this is a phenomenal sequence. You're covering so much ground. You're interviewing so many people. Like, it's fast paced. It's still moving, but it's giving you a lot of information. But what happens with this movie and what starts to really drag it down is that it keeps just building and developing story and moving through characters, and you keep getting all these different story elements that come into play, that keep like building on top of each other, that it becomes kind of overwhelming and incoherent at a certain point. There's just so much going on. I wish they would have just left that police procedural aspect, maybe not left it behind, but significantly cut down on it, because moving forward, it is the majority of the film.
It is, and I feel like this film is one of the more prominent examples of uh, telling and not showing that I've seen in quite some time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, in some moments, maybe that's intentional. Like this moment we just saw as a standalone sequence, that would have been great. That would have been really cool. You're seeing him at work, you're seeing him do his job. I've had enough of it. But we see this technique multiple times throughout the movie. We interview so many freaking people. We're getting information. We're picking up hookers in jails, getting information. It's just so much. And it does bog it down. I'm going to give you that 100%.
Because he does more investigating. Now that he has the name Bernard Phillips, he runs it through his police outlets, finds that Bernard Phillips has no school records at all, but he does have an address of Bernard Phillips' mother. So he goes to her apartment to ask her some questions. He buzzes himself in. He goes up the stairs. I do like this sequence. This is pretty creepy. As he gets to the top of the stairs, it reminds me of like Psycho, the moment in Psycho with Arbogast getting up to the top of the stairs. This fucking crazy mother bursts out of her apartment with a fucking butcher knife, slices his hand, and is trying to stab him. She's doing this horrible, horrible, like bone chilling scream. And he like throws her out of the way, and this poor woman, I wouldn't want to say poor woman, this woman tumbles down the stairs to her death. And as she's dying, he runs down to her. He's like, say it, goddamn it. And she keeps going, gah, gah, gah. She can't say it. And then she just dies. But you know what she's going to say. She's trying to say God told her to.
I thought the scene was fucking great.
It's phenomenal. It's great.
It really, it took me by surprise. Like, I mean, I knew something was going to happen, but I didn't think she was just going to come out swinging like that with that fucking knife. And then that whole moment of them going down the steps, like, because I hear you, it has Psycho's vibes for sure, but it really like lingers on the brutality of people falling down the staircase. Because like, I mean, like that woman, she goes down like head first on that staircase at one point, and by the time she gets to the bottom of the steps, just seeing her there bleeding out, it's pretty startling. It's a rather shocking scene, and it's handled really well. And the fact that you don't even get you don't get the full sentence, she dies before she can, but you know deep down, and he knows as well. And so he's in full panic mode now. He knows that this is not just a coincidence, and he's being proactive.
He is being proactive. So yeah, his hand bleeding. He when his hand is bleeding, he does leave her apartment, and he goes outside, and he does notice like outside the apartment there's this big shrine to Saint Bernard. And he goes to the hospital where the examiner is examining her body and tells Peter, he's like, there must be a mistake. This wasn't a Mrs. Bernard because she's a virgin birth. This is the first of many mentions we get of virgin births in this film. And of course, like, it just, okay, fine. We find that out. You're telling us this was a virgin birth. So then he goes down to talk to the doctor that delivered baby Bernard. The doctor tells him that when the baby was born, basically they could not determine whether it was a male or a female. It had no distinct sex organs. So they would just went along with the mother wanting to call this baby Bernard.
And he talks about how the mother felt like completely like calm and understanding, and does not seem really like at all affected by the fact that her baby is, different, unique. But yeah, so it's setting up this character. It's all building up to what will be the introduction of Bernard. This is where they really start laying the groundwork of this character. And I'm going to say, like, just so you all know, moving through this review, I definitely think that what ends up being the reveal for Bernard is kind of the downfall of the movie. We're going to get there. I just want you to keep this in mind as you move through this review, that Bernard really kind of sinks what is a ship that is, at this point, this ship has been moving nicely at a fine pace. It's moving full speed ahead. Bernard and his just overall existence and what he brings to the table with this film definitely steers it off course a bit. What do you think, Troy?
Absolutely. And the fact that they call him Bernard, that's not a very intimidating, godlike name to begin with. So like, I'm not going to be scared of somebody named Bernard. Like, could they have not come up with something a little bit more demanding sounding or something? Bernard. Oh, Bernard summoning you. I'd be like, fuck Bernard. Like, that does not sound, I am not going to be taking orders from Bernard. I can tell you that much. But now we cut to Peter now questioning this random man who I mentioned earlier that I would like to have seen this scene too. This man who is just nonchalantly talking about that he literally just shot his kids and wife. And it gets pretty gruesome because he shot his son in the back of the head, and then his wife started screaming. He shot her, and his little daughter ran into the bathroom, and she was scared, and he had to convince her to come out by saying that it's just a game. Daddy's just playing a game with mommy and brother, and the gun is fake. And he says after a few minutes, the bathroom door opened and she came out, and I let her hold the gun and told her it was a toy, and she started laughing, and that's when I shot her.
For not showing the scene, this sequence is still phenomenal for what it's doing. The acting, again, on behalf of this gentleman, is phenomenal. I really think his delivery, it's just so not affected. He's so calm. He's content. He's serene almost. And he's chuckling his way through this dialogue. And it just, what you're hearing him say, it's sick. It's truly twisted what he did. And it talks in such extreme detail. I absolutely adore the scene. And they come into it, entering again from that police procedural element. So like the fact that they're not showing the kills, I get what they're doing. They're playing up that kind of, you're coming into it from Peter's viewpoint. You weren't there for the sequence, so you're coming in and you know as little as he did. I get what they're doing, but they're taking it down. So they're making such specific choices with how they're handling this that they're just simply not leaning into the strengths. They're not leaning into their strengths of what they showed us prior. And so we do start to feel really deprived because the way he describes the scene, it's just so graphic. Yeah, I wish I would have seen something setting up to this because, I don't know, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't
But he's also a little bit more insightful into the idea that God told him to do it, because Peter asks him, he's like, "Don't you feel bad? Like you literally just blew away your whole family." He's like, "No, I don't think I've ever felt so good." Peter's like, "What? How can you say that?" He's like, it's been very, because it was very fulfilling to do something for him after all he's done for us. He told me to do it. He even guided my hand. I didn't even have to aim," he says. And again, now Peter's like, "Fuck this again." So Peter actually gets really aggressive, like grabs this guy, throws him. He's like, "You motherfucker, you blew your son's head off." And his partner has to run up and tell him, "I've never seen you fly into this sort of rage. You need to be careful because you could actually hurt someone." But I mean, just this guy, like, so he seems so at peace with the fact that he was able to do something that God told him to do because of everything that God has done for him.
this film has, up to this point, and will continue to do so, has bombarded you with characters. And it's not necessarily a bad thing because almost every character you're introduced to is acted extremely well. But like, I'm going to use an example. His partner that you just mentioned, he has this really kind of tender moment with him, almost like kind of got gay vibes as he puts his hand up on his shoulder to comfort him. I'm not saying that they're trying to be gay, but like, for cop to cop, brother to brother, like I feel that it feels almost too sensitive. And then they never revisit this character again. Like, he doesn't really come back into play. This character doesn't bring anything to the storyline. It's just kind of weird. Like, why do they have this moment?
Roger, there's a lot of characters that don't, like, they just show up and I'm like, who? I don't even, like, in my notes I can't even give them a name because I don't know their name. They just show up to, again, tell information and then they're gone. Very good example. The next scene, he is back I don't know where he's at. Who is this supposed to be? Is this his dad? Is this an older officer friend? I don't know. It's just an old man. He's in his apartment, and he's asking him, "Is you ever have a case where someone claimed that God told them to do something?" He's like, "Yeah, you get that all the time." He's like, "This and that." Some of this shit this man says, I'm like, "Oh my god." He's like, "Yeah, you get some of those young girls that claim that, but then it turns out it was just their stepdad or their teacher." I'm like, "Holy shit, dude!" But he's like, "But I do remember a case my old partner had back in 1951 where a girl told him that God did her." That's it. This is this guy's whole scene. Who was it, Roger? Do you know?
So what I gather from this moment is they do this really great shot leading into this moment. Like, this film is often very pretty. I need to again acknowledge that. Some great transitions too. This moment opens on a shot. It's an aerial shot over top what is the parking garage for all of the police officers' scooters that they use. And so this guy, I think, is like their mechanic back there. I'm guessing a former, an old cop who's now maybe the mechanic or runs that area of that department and has a relationship with Peter. But I'm literally piecing this together because this is the only scene to put that together. That's what I'm assuming, because I have the same note. But with the setup, you think this character is going to be way more prominent because he has this great moment with him, and then he never comes up again. Like, you never see this guy again, and I was just waiting for this guy to come back.
And that is the reason why I asked you who this guy was, because I love the fact, because this has happened in several movies we've watched, where I'm like, who is this character? I don't know who they're supposed to be. I always ask you because I know you've created some backstory for who this fucking character is. I know, I always know Roger's going to have some story for who this is. Okay, I'll buy it's a mechanic, but like, yeah, you're not given much at all here. But what ends up happening again, another scene of Peter going and being told something because he goes to find who this partner was. And this guy basically tells him about the night that he encountered Mrs. Phillips, who ended up being Mrs. Phillips, running nude down the street. We do get a flashback. This is the one moment the film can give us a flashback. It won't give us a flashback or anything in any of these murders or whatnot, but we can get a flashback of this broad running down the street, butt ass naked. He picks her up in a rainstorm, and she's begging for help. She gets in, and she tells him that she was like walking along, leaving Nantucket, the carnival or something at Nantucket, when this huge thing hovered above her, the size of a house. Next thing she knows, it lifted her up into the air, and we actually get a flashback of her naked body floating in this thing. And she was it took her clothes off and violated her and then dropped her back down. And of course he's laughing at her, and he's like, "Oh my God. So that's what you're telling me happened?" He's like, "What? Did it fool around with you?" And that's when she like gets out and runs away. But this dude is not the most compassionate individual, because even like when Peter first gets there to ask him about Miss Phillips, the night you picked up Miss Phillips, he's like, "Yeah, if I was her husband, I would have beat the shit out of her."
And like, just, acknowledging your point here and agreeing with you, why couldn't this gentleman in the garage, why couldn't he have been just combined with this other officer? Why could he have just been the one in the story who's like, "Oh, I had this experience once," and then like gone into that? Neither of these men ever come back into play. So like, I mean, just, couldn't they just have skipped a couple of steps here and just gotten you to the point a little bit faster for a bigger payoff?
Well, yeah, why couldn't have the first guy just told him the story? Hey, this is what my buddy told me happened to him. He picked up. You still could have got the flashback, right? Because then we jump to another person that is just there for God knows what reason. Because this is, I mean, I know it drives a little bit of plot, but like nothing major. He goes to talk to a reporter because he wants the reporter to write the story about these people committing homicides that are claiming God told them to do it. This reporter is like, "Hey, I'm not the right man for you. You can go up and talk to the religious reporter upstairs." It's like, "Because I will have priests and rabbis hanging me by my nose if I wrote such a piece." And he's like, "Well, you weren't too concerned when you wrote that piece about, some hit piece about a priest or something doing something." I don't necessarily remember what he said, but then the reporter's like, "Well, you know what? The more I think about it, the more it would be interesting to see how the atheists would react to such a piece. But also, like, how are people going to react to the idea that there's a God is coaching snipers on the streets of New York City?" Ultimately, though, he agrees to print this article, and he's like, it's going to appear in a small little blurb on the second page. But again, what is the point of this, Roger? What is the point of this?
I mean, I'll be real. On my end, we're not yet really at the point that I started to get turned off by the police procedural angle. I find it interesting. But I do think it's bloated. And the problem is we're just getting too much of that and not balancing it out with, again, the things that we're really wanting to see from it. So I do find like all of these interactions to be really well done. They're interesting in the sense that it's building to a really good idea. I like that he's deciding to have it released via the newspaper because the police refused to say anything. The police are not actively doing anything about it. They refuse to take it to the public, So I like his decision. He's making good choices. Everything that we've seen in revolving around like the abduction aspect, like even that was fairly interesting to me. We got full frontal female nudity. That was pretty shocking. I thought that some of the green screen work was maybe a bit dated, but still, like, it's playing with interesting concepts because I do like aliens, as we know from Dark Skies. But it's about to just go in a route that I just don't like. And so that's really my big issue. I'm not totally turned off by this point, though. I just don't like where they're going with it.
And something we glossed over with the whole abduction flashback is the idea that she was raped and impregnated by an alien, and that's how she had a virgin birth. So that Bernard was birthed by a alien being. That's something we glossed over. I think we would hit it hard at the end because it's definitely comes into play then, but that's what's definitely insinuated in that scene. Now we move to a scene of Casey being questioned by the captain and several c- commanding officers about Peter. And she reveals that Peter was adopted, and he's always been kind of really secretive about his past, his adoptive parents, etc. He doesn't really know who his real parents are. They asked him if he has trouble sleeping, and she says, "Why don't you ask his wife?"
I thought this was kind of a jarring transition, going from the newspapers to suddenly like you're in this moment where Casey's being interviewed, and I know we've been seeing so much police procedural, but still, like, I was kind of thrown off. I guess it makes sense that they'd be looking for him and be pissed at him because he fucking released, this information to the public. That's, I'm sure, a crime, but it just doesn't really set up the stage for that. All of a sudden, you're just in this like boardroom where they're waiting for Casey. She gets walked in and she gets launched, all these questions, and you're like, whoa, we're kind of just shifting the tone here for a minute, and I'm just kind of thrown off a bit. Did you feel that?
Yeah, I mean, scene could have been cut in my mind. Like if you cut the scene, you're not losing anything. You're like not losing anything plot wise. This was just another kind of talky scene thrown into the mix of this film. Basically, she gets mad at them. She's like, "This is starting to sound like an inquisition. I'm leaving." And the sergeant says, "Yes, ma'am, but I want you to realize that people who are too damn religious make a lot of trouble for everyone." Ain't that the fucking truth? Ain't that the fucking truth?
What a good fucking line, Troy.
I know.
That's the reason they kept that scene in there, so he could have that moment. And I think that was the first, when I watched through this the first time, I realized exactly just how much they were challenging the idea of religion in this movie. I thought it was kind of ballsy to have the idea of a virgin birth being actually an alien abduction, because I definitely know that they're implying something with that. I mean, they're definitely implying that this is not the first virgin birth, and maybe like Christianity is built around the idea that it's actually an alien. I thought that was pretty wild. But when he said this line, I mean, that's pointed. It's very pointed. And it's at a lot of religions, but especially extreme Christians, I feel. And oh boy, absolutely, you're right. Ain't that the fucking truth indeed? And the way he says it, I was just like, preach it, brother. I hear ya. Holy shit, it hits.
Well, and her response is, "You are right, sir. Religion can ruin a man. You'll see to that." And then we cut to what appears to be a lot of religious outbreak riots because of the article printed. People are like rioting. Religious people are rioting. Other people are rioting because it's put out there that God is telling people to kill people. So of course the religious folks, the folks of faith, are not happy with this. So they're out there protesting in front of the newspaper, protesting in front of the police station, and then others are counter protesting. I really wish we would have got more of this element, but it's just shown in a couple of quick flashes, and then it's kind of done.
This one fight sequence they show with these people brawling, I was like, holy shit! Like these people are just full on fighting in front of the camera. Yeah, it looks really violent. I wish at this point I could have really used a moment like this. But it's not. It's literally just like newsreel.
Yeah, and it's done. Now this next scene, talk about what the fuck moments, Roger. We cut to Detective Jordan, who we've seen a couple times here. He's been prominent. He gets confronted by one of the drug dealers on the streets, apparently, who wants to know, like, "Hey, I thought we had a deal, man. Why are my people still being arrested?" Jordan says, "Listen, I'm doing what I can. The captain said people needed to be arrested, so I had to find a few people to arrest." That's when they like moves him into the stairwell, and he pulls out a fucking knife, and he says, "You know what? I've been trying to think of a way to take care of you for a long time. And now with all these God killings, I think I have the way." And he proceeds to stab Detective Jordan to death in the fucking stairwell.
I really needed a kill, but I did not need this at this point. I had no idea who, at least the one character is at all. I mean, Zero gets introduced here. The character's name is Zero. I'm not a fan of the character. Has not aged well. And he gets introduced out of fucking nowhere. And there's this whole idea that's just introduced about Jordan, being a crooked cop and you know being aligned with the wrong side of the streets and it's never even been touched on before. If it has, like, I didn't catch it. And so for this to be introduced as a plot point and then to have this character get killed, I don't know, man. I could have dealt with literally this entire subplot being removed. It serves the film no purpose at all. At all.
I wish they would have taken anything involving Zero, any of that, where the kind of the final moments of the film with Zero. I wish that would have all been removed, to be honest with you. But yeah, no, this is just jarring. He writes God on the wall in the detective's blood. I kind of see where they were going. Like it's actually sets up an interesting theme or idea of are people going to use this as an excuse to kill people and get away with it? Like, are they going to be able to, like, just, I'm going to kill my wife and I'm going to say God told me to, and they'll put me in an asylum and I won't be, you don't have to go to jail. It's, because even like, if you go back to the guy in the asylum that talks about shooting his family, even Peter's partner said, you know what's going to happen to this guy? He's going to serve a couple of years in this mental facility and he's going to be out and people are going to forget about it. So I think they were setting up a really good, like, subplot, but it goes nowhere. Like, I love the idea of people committing murders and blaming it on God told them to, because that's the hysteria that's happening. Great idea, but here it fails. It goes nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely not. And all it does is create a few characters who are really just unlikable and unfortunate, I think, portrayals that feel very of the era, but just are not aspects of the film that age well at all. And they're just not explored enough for me to really care or for it to feel relevant to the story. So it does the overall film a great disservice. The stabbing's kind of effective. There's some really creepy shots of Jordan just laying there on the ground looking very much dead. So I did appreciate that, but yeah, it's not enough to really go anywhere.
So yeah, and there's this conversation that the captain has on the phone with Peter, and Peter is like, this is not connected to the God murders. He's like, most of the God murders don't leave the scene; they stick around. They stay with their victims, and he's like, I know Jordan was playing both sides of the street, so it has something to do with that. I guarantee it. And the captain's like, is that any way to talk about a dead officer? He's like, well, it's the truth, sir. Then we get the moment where Peter goes to jail to question this hooker about her involvement with Jordan and her pimp, Joe Brown, who's been, what does this have to do with anything? What is he trying to find out? I guess he's trying to find out who possibly could have killed Jordan, but, like, do we need this scene? Because who killed Jordan does not seem to be that big of a issue in this film to have this scene.
This film is getting too distracted, and it needs to just maintain its course. And yeah, I mean, like, is this scene again, like, well done and well acted? Yeah, absolutely. But it feels very disjointed at this point. And for me, this is around where it's really starting to lose its pacing, to lose its steam.
Well, you lasted a lot longer than I did in that regard. And I'm not saying there are but it's just so heavy-handed with the telling and just characters revealing things and just moving from one conversation to a new character that's introduced to a next, to a next, to a next. It's just in a row. And you're just like, oh my God, can we get something happen? And then, okay. And this is another that I'm talking about. Now we cut to a room full of men. Is this the city council? We do, including the one guy who made the phone call earlier in the film to tell the cops about the parade shooting. But they're all talking about, like, the killers, and, like, they're apparently aware of who this Bernard is and the power that he has. Like, is this some sort of, like, secret society? What is going on here?
Yeah, so and it's kind of sprinkled. It's not like, it's not really handed clearly off to you, but it is sprinkled kind of throughout bits of dialogue and so forth. But I mean, basically Bernard has telepathically started creating his own cult of followers, and he's using, like, high-ranking religious figures to form this kind of, like, minions, if you will, who are doing his bidding. And that's why whenever there's been a shooting, they always want to make it known, because that's been mentioned a few times now, that before every killing, before every mass murder or whatever it is, it's announced first. They always get contacted. The police department's contacted. So it's always them. It's these guys. It's his cult members working behind the scenes. And it's interesting in concept to me. Like, I like that he has people doing his bidding. It's another aspect that I could think this film could really use a remake, because I think this could be handled completely differently. But right now, it's just a group of old white men, which I guess makes sense for the era. Like, that's probably what it would be. Wealthy white men, prestigious white men, who are, his high-ranking officials, and they're all just kind of doing his bidding as needed, and they're kind of getting ready for what he's making clear is going to be some kind of big event. And so they're all clued in on the killings. Some of them are very much questioning the killings, which I also like that aspect. But these characters are not clearly or coherently enough explained to the viewer. And when we do get moments with them, we're just not close enough to them. We don't really understand. So it's very brief. You just don't have enough time spent with this to feel like a strong aspect of the film.
Yeah, then I do wish that more time was spent building this idea of this telepathic cult, because it is actually very intriguing. Yeah, and some of the conversations these guys have, like one guy's like, "Why can't he just come and like save people and do good deeds?" And the other one's like, "Well, because you get more attention like killing people." Like he basically bluntly says, like, you're not going to convince people to join you by doing something nice for them, but when you put fear in them by killing them, or letting them know that you are capable of killing, they're going to join you. So it's that idea of like being coerced into doing something that you don't want to do by the idea of harm or violence or whatever. And then they also do mention the fact that Bernard has a big interest in a detective. He wants this detective to join them. So we cut to the street where Peter is picked up by a man who says that his boss, Mr. Richards, wants to talk to him. His driver tells him to get in this limo, drives him to Richards' hotel room or whatever it is. This is a man who basically reveals that Bernard, as you mentioned, has spoken to this group of powerful men in New York City telepathically, and they were all chosen. They all just like showed up at the same location at the same time. And since then, they've been doing these regular meetings, and Bernard has kind of been their leader. I mean, it's a lot coming at once from this character we've never seen. And then Peter asks him, has Bernard ever told you about his mother? The fact that she was walking on a beach in 1951. And this is when Richard, he's like, I don't want to hear this. And he literally starts to choke to death. I mean, this is an elaborate scene where like this poor man falls on the ground. He's like hacking. Peter's like yelling at him, shaking him to fight him, bangs him on the chest. And then he just dies right there in front of Peter. So obviously, like, Bernard is very much in tune to what's going on with these men. And if somebody gets too close to the truth, or if one of these men find out too close to the truth or is revealed too much about him, he's going to kill them, right?
I feel that this is one of the most intriguing aspects of the movie, and it is certainly not explored enough, which is disappointing, because, as quickly as we're introduced to this group of men, we then go to this moment with Richards. It's quite a good scene. It's suspenseful. You're learning so much so fast. And then all of a sudden, yeah, he's just dispatched. And it's shocking. He basically has like a heart attack or something. And he falls and he dies right there in Peter's arms. But there's so many interesting things being explored. Even the fact that like they find Peter telepathically. Like all of these telepathic aspects that are coming into play, they're just suddenly there out of nowhere. And it feels like almost you as the viewer are supposed to just kind of like roll with it. But it does start to feel very like confusing. There's so many moments coming up here where I'm like, what the fuck is happening? And I normally follow along pretty well. And you're right, Troy. Like I'll even like make up excuses or storylines in my mind, like try to explain things off. But there's some things that happen coming up here that I'm just like, I can't exactly say what happened. Like it gets very convoluted.
Yeah, this movie, like it has a lot of good ideas and a lot of good themes, but it just touches the surface of them. It doesn't really elaborate on any of them enough in my mind. So Peter just like leaves this dead guy nonchalantly. He goes to the subway where we see that the guy who made the phone call at the beginning of the film about the parade is following him. And as Peter's standing on the ledge waiting for the train. As the train's approaching, this guy like runs up to him and is literally trying to push him on the track. But Peter resists and he's like, I've been waiting for you. And he slams him against the wall. And we find out this gentleman's name is Logan. And he basically says that this was his task. Killing Peter was his task to make up for alerting the cops that there was going to be a shooting at the parade. This was sort of this was how he had to repent. And he failed. And Peter is like, do you know where this Bernard is? And Logan's like, yes, but I can't take you there because I can't tell him that I failed. And Peter's like, well, you don't have to. I'll tell him for you. Let's go.
I feel that there's a big aspect of all of this that feels like Bernard and Peter are almost like being drawn to each other. This all feels very intentional. So again, when we say that there's interesting concepts that they're just touching the surface of them, this is building to a moment here that we've kind of been anticipating. That Bernard is going to be handed off as a rather massive aspect of the film, and there's so many ways that they could go about doing this. The setup of entering this building, this warehouse kind of building, and taking this freight elevator down to find him, it's building up to something. It feels like it's going to be quite monumental. But Troy, like, my God, I can't think of a time when I have watched a film. I cannot think of another occasion in which I've been more surprisingly let down than upon the reveal of this character.
Yes. So, yes, Logan leads him to this dilapidated building, takes him down the freight elevator to the basement because he says Bernard does not like to go upstairs. He likes isolation because he's becoming more powerful. And then something happens to Logan. He gets killed.
So Logan, because he failed Bernard, he sends the elevator to go back up, and then he bends down and he puts his head in the open slot. So when the elevator goes up, the wall basically crushes his skull. You'd never fucking know it, because while it's intense and creepy because you hear him screaming, you don't see shit. And it's now enough times over the course of multiple events where we've not seen the brutality, and we've seen this film do it. We've seen this film do some brutal, shocking things. So now to just not show it feels lazy. It feels like they're skimming past it.
They definitely do, because I had no idea what happened to him. I'm like, okay, I guess he died. We hear him make a noise, so I guess he's dead. But yes, Peter goes in this furnace room, and we see, Roger, yes, what is one of the most lackluster villain reveals of all time. Bernard, who long blonde flowing locks, wearing all white, glowing, and he immediately retreats. He acts like he's scared of Peter. And Peter's like, why are you scared? What don't you want me to find out? And Peter's starting to realize, you know what? Bernard can't kill me. He's like, you can't kill me, can you? Because I'm different too. This Bernard character, though, is like, the way we're introduced to it is just pointless. But he barely says anything. And then Peter gets dizzy and goes to he gets towards these flames. Bernard approaches and causes fire to shoot out of this furnace. I mean, Peter gets up and he runs back upstairs, and that's their first encounter. It's like, you think Bernard maybe is going to kill him or try to kill him, which he does, but he fails. But this Bernard character has to be the least intimidating thing I've ever seen in my life.
Bernard looks like he is about to break out into a performance of ABBA's Waterloo. He is just fair, blonde, Swedish-esque looking individual in a flowing tunic, barefooted, gold. This man is projecting gold light. I'm curious how he managed to go around interacting with people up until this point, because I'm assuming he couldn't always have been gold, because now they're saying he's getting more powerful, so I'm assuming this is him in his more powerful form, glowing, but it does not make him at all intimidating. It doesn't do anything. This being bathed in yellow light, golden yellow light, does not add an intimidation factor to him. And he definitely has a skin thing going on where he's starting to look more alien-like when you look at his face. But the light is so bright, he's so blown out that you really can barely tell what's going on. So he just looks like a long-haired Swedish man in a white gown, and it's such a monumental letdown. And the first thing that happens when Peter walks in the room, literally the first thing that happens, like Bernard like scuttles away from him into the corner, and he like puts his hands up like he's about to do some like magic spell. And it's just, for being the introduction to this, what is supposed to be, I would assume, this formidable opponent. I can't imagine him looking any more weaker or like less like just completely incapable of defending himself.
Precisely. Just look, I mean, he's cowering away. Like there's nothing intimidating about this person. And I get it. His power comes telepathically, but there had to have been at some point, right, where he was having to socialize with people and having to get them to do what he said before he became powerful enough to do it telepathically, because we are told early in the film that he was talking to all these people. But this dude, like this, if this guy walked up to me wearing all white, those long blonde flowing locks, no shoes on, I'm gonna be, yeah, sorry. I mean, it's sort of insulting, but I mean, I guess, in a roundabout way, I'm trying to get what they were going for, but I feel like, I don't know. And it's not that the character isn't played well, he is, but it's just in the context of the film, I was pretty let down.
I wanted something so different, Troy. I wanted something like, I think I had this idea in my mind. I had my heart set on how I thought this movie was going to go. Earlier I compared it to like the experience I took from Life Force, and Life Force definitely had moments where it was kind of all over the place. But holy fuck, if we're going to talk about a finale and and overall a force that is intimidating, an alien force at that. I mean, that movie gave us so much to run with. This film, when this introduces the main opponent, the main antagonist, it couldn't be more of a miss, in my opinion.
I agree. It really, it's kind of sank the film for me. And then now, and it's brief, Roger. It's not like there's some big confrontation. They don't have lengthy dialogue. There's no like battle of the wits. It's literally probably a 2-minute scene. Once the fire comes out, Peter runs outside. He leaves. And now we cut to him doing more investigative work, because at this moment, what it did allow him to realize is that he's special. Like he has some sort of powers or something. So he goes to the orphanage that he was at as a child and asks a nun for his adoption records. She agrees, and she goes and gets the record and tells him his mother's name, Elizabeth Mullen, and that you were a child born out of wedlock, or this child was born out of wedlock, because there's no name listed for the father.
This nun, standout performance, by the way. This old broad, this old withered woman. God, I'm sure she's not with us today, but she was my favorite in the movie. Now things start to move fast. Earlier it was really just, it was moving fast, but it was bogging you down with too much information. Now it's skimming past these major concepts. It's like it filled the movie up with so much at the beginning of it. Now they have to get through these huge explanations by, just like you said, just talking through it. They talk through all of these big revelations, and it's just it's feeling like it's kind of losing itself and losing the pacing it set up so well at the very beginning of the movie. It's completely just all over the place now. And so I really get bummed out that this movie, as it starts to build towards the final chunk, the final, eventually the climax, it does not devote enough time at all for these big moments, these big revelations we're going to be having over this final stretch of the film.
Well, he goes to the nursing home where he tracks down Mrs. Mullen. He goes to see her. Knox goes in her room, and this is played by the lovely Sylvia Sidney, who's been in a lot of shit. Beetlejuice, she's been in a lot. He goes in, and she's quite alert. Like, she's not like some old bedridden woman on the verge of death. She's quite alert. Asks him what he wants. He says, what can you tell me about the New York's World Fair? And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, do you remember talking to a policeman about what happened to you after the fair? And then she recounts what happened to her. We get another flashback. She was coming home from the fair, and basically a giant object floated above her, sucked her in. We get the flashback again of this naked woman being sucked into this spaceship floating there and having her clothes taken off, and she was impregnated. And when she found out she was pregnant, like her father like beat her, thinking that she actually slept with the man. For the 9 months that this baby was growing in her, she hated it and even thought about committing suicide. But when it was born, the church took the baby away from her and she never saw it again. And then she talks about how she's still a virgin. She's like, me and Gladys down there, she's a virgin too. We must be the only two left. And then she's like, who are you again? And, she can tell like the fact that she's saying that she hated the baby, all these things have drug up all these emotions on her face. And then she realizes, she's like, you are him, aren't you? And she like freaks out, Roger. She screams at him to get out, to leave her alone. Don't touch her. You've hurt me enough. You've hurt me enough. And the doctors have to come in and he like runs out of the room. But so much is revealed, but the scene, I'm describing it, but the scene literally is maybe like a minute long.
And Troy, like, what's disappointing is this is a moment in the film that I think is exceptional. And this is one of the moments that I feel just deserved more, because God, she's great. I mean, you're right. She's with it. She's not some senile older woman. She's with it, and she delivers quite an interesting and emotional monologue, almost, on what happened. And yeah, again, we get some of the abduction footage, obviously, of her personal abduction. We get a really interesting shot of her actually being lifted into the UFO, and it does look very green screen with wire work, but God, like, at least they did it, and it looks cool. It almost has its own style when it comes to the abductions, but it's brief, it's fleeting, and I was really hoping to see more of it. And I believe this is the moment also where you're seeing that kind of fleshy, almost like vaginal thing. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, there's this...
Yeah, in the flashback, you do see like one of the aliens has this, or one of the being, we don't know what the being that's in this ship does have we get a close up on like this vaginal slit thing.
Yeah, but like, I mean, I really thought, like, especially as they built up to this big emotional moment where he grabs her and he's trying to force her to hug him, as he's like, what about me? Haven't you thought about like what I've been going through and not understanding? And she's screaming. She's like, don't touch me. And the nurses come running in, and he runs from the room, and his mother, who we learn is his mother, has this really raw moment where she just grips herself and falls down on the bed, and she's like, don't ever touch me again. And it's really like quite a strong moment. There's just not enough of those right now at this point, but God, I really like this scene.
Strong moment, cuts away, and it's a big reveal because we find out that, like I said, that Peter is a baby that was born from a virgin birth, from a fucking alien, Roger. We now cut back to who I've been missing the entire film, Martha. And guess who shows up at her place? Blonde ass Casey. Casey's right away, she's like, do you know who I am? And she's like, yeah, you're Casey, aren't you? She comes in, and Casey tells him Peter hasn't been home in 3 nights. And Martha's like, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, he's not like other men. And Casey asks why they never had children. Martha reveals, and this, we kind of get a sense then of why this character is the way she is. She reveals that she has been pregnant 3 times, and they all ended in miscarriages right around the 5th month. There was no explanation. Doctors could not figure out why she was miscarriaging. Casey's like, oh my God, that's terrible. I never knew that. And Martha says, that's because he wasn't sorry. And he seemed relieved that the babies weren't born. He always had a fear of having kids. It's like he knew they wouldn't be born. And then she mentions the fact that the doctor basically convinced her to have an operation, her tubes tied, so she couldn't have any more pregnancies. And she went along with it because that's what the doctor wanted. That's what Peter wanted. And then he leaves her, and she's like, and now I'm alone. I have nothing.
I mean, think of a sadder story. My God. Oh, this poor character, for not being in much of the movie, like the few times that you do see her, they really just, it's a whopper of a story she's sharing. Forced stillbirth? Like, she could have produced offspring, but he, like, telepathically, I guess, killed these children. I don't know. God, that's depressing. And she's, like, so composed. I mean, she's clearly extremely unhappy, very depressed. There's so much sadness in this woman's eyes, but she's almost, like, accepted it at this point, which it's just really sad.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hinted at here in these final moments that he killed the kids. And in fact, like, Casey gets up. She's like, you know what? I got to get back to the city. Martha grabs her hand and looks at her in the eye, and she's like, what kind of man wishes his babies were stillborn? And Casey's kind of left speechless. And at that moment, fucking Peter walks in. And, he doesn't seem overly surprised. He's like, I'm actually glad you both are here. I've never seen you two together. And Martha says something like, I know you're going away, aren't you? And then he has this line. He's like, you know what, Martha, all of my life, I felt close to God. But now I realize all the time that it wasn't him. And it's kind of powerful when you really think about like who he really has been close to then. It's something because then he says he wishes he would have saved all the love that he had for God his entire life. He wished he would have given some of it to her. And he proceeds to kiss her in front of Casey.
Ooh, I love this moment, Troy. I love Casey's response. Like she's so overwhelmed. Like she just like turns away from it, and she like kind of almost like just walks off and like stands in a corner, like just like not wanting to even be exposed to it, because she's feeling for a moment, she's feeling like, oh my God, like he loves her more than me. I've been a fool this whole time. And again, this great character dynamic that could have been explored so much more. We're getting the really amazing conclusion to it, but it feels like they almost kind of breeze through it. Like, yeah, he gives this great little moment to Martha. They have this kiss. Then he goes over to Casey. They have a really well acted moment together, and then the women are just kind of like left. They're like no longer part of the story moving forward.
No, he tells Casey before he leaves, is like, there's nothing left for us. We're all gonna just have to let each other go. And that's it. And you're like, fuck. So you just ruined two women's lives. I mean, dude, for somebody who started out as such a heroic, likable character, he sure has transgressed into something quite more despicable, right? And I think maybe that's the point as we get to talking about the ending of the film. Like, it's really an interesting dynamic and an interesting character arc for this character. He leaves, and we cut to this fucking grungy ass pool hall where all these people are playing pool. That the pimp Zero, who killed Officer Jordan earlier on the film, comes in, and he literally, like, one of his customers has been waiting for, because he's also a drug dealer. One of his customers has been waiting for him for like a couple hours, and he's like, man, I've been waiting for you. Here's $100. And this guy like literally just starts to like manhandle his customer, like grabs him, like physically assaulting this guy, takes him into a room and tells him to pull down his pants because he thinks he has more money.
This character is so despicable, but he has so little time on camera that they just smother him with unlikability as much as they possibly can over the course of two scenes. And it really feels like it's just misguided, because what's about to happen here, like if this was maybe the conclusion for a villain who had been consistently present throughout the course of the whole movie and had multiple interactions with Peter, I would be like, okay, like I get it, this is landing, but like all this is tied to is that one random cop having been killed, and then that was like explored for a moment and it never came into play again.
But why? Okay, so let me ask you this. Why does Peter show up here? Like, what is the point? Especially after all that he's found out, that has been revealed. Why does he feel the need to go to this bar? I don't understand. Because he shows up, like Peter shows up at this bar, and I kept asking myself, like, why is he there? Was he that connected to Jordan that he absolutely has to get revenge on the person that killed him? Because it certainly didn't seem that way. Like there was no real relationship built up between the two of them that I would be like, oh, he's there to get revenge. This makes sense. Like I just could not figure out why he was here, except just to show the audience like what is revealed here, right?
Well, I have a theory on it. I have a theory, and I wish it was the idea that you presented. I wish there was some of that. Like, I wish that he did have a relationship with Jordan and that maybe he was there to avenge his death. What I think, because this movie is so vague, but it's always hitting at things, what I think is that because it was such a moment when Zero killed Jordan and used the blood to right God, I think because he falsely claimed that God told him to, he showed up there and was like, okay, you have to follow through with it.
That makes sense. But again, it's just filling in a lot of stuff from nothing. Like there's nothing that hints at that at all. To me, this is a very shoehorned in scene just to show that Peter can't be killed. That's all. Like, that's all it is to me. Like, I don't get any of that, any of this other stuff. I feel like this scene exists just to show that Peter can't be killed, because what happens is he shows up, Zero's there, the group in the bar is sizing him up. Zero comes out to Peter, and Peter's like, "Hey, would any of you happen to know who killed Detective Jordan?" And, Zero smirks like, "What, man? You gonna bust me by yourself?" And he pulls out a knife, and he literally tries to stab Peter to death, but he cannot. Like, every time he stabs it, he totally avoids Peter. It's kind of a Roger. It's kind of a hokey scene.
Oh yeah,
I get what they're doing, but yeah, he can't bring himself to stab Peter. He keeps missing. But then, like, to prove otherwise, like to prove to himself and to people around him that he's not a pussy, that's not him pussing out, he literally just grabs these random bar patrons and starts stabbing them.
I feel like there is also like an underlying element, and I hate to be this person, but like I can't deny it now watching it in 2024. There's something about seeing this, this white guy walk into this African American bar. Everyone's made to look very intimidating. It's got a great soundtrack, I'll say that. But he walks in, and then he has this whole moment where he's fighting with Zero, who is such a bad guy. Like, he is just maniacal. And he's, throwing that poor guy around and, making him drop his pants, like you said, and everything. Like, everything unlikable he could possibly do, he does it. So now he has this whole moment, and there's this whole bit where, like, Peter's standing there with, like, light glowing around his eyes as he takes Zero over, with his telepathic abilities, and causes him to start stabbing, like, his cohorts and his friends. And so this guy is just stabbing these other people of color, and it just... I mean, aside from just being, like I said, completely misguided, and the last thing I wanted to see out of this film in the sense of the story, it also just seems like it is not aged well. This is a moment that does not feel it aged well at all, and it just doesn't lend anything to the story. It's definitely not the big climactic moment I wanted from the film.
It doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to exist, regardless of whether it was a white bar, white characters. This just doesn't need to exist. Period. It just serves no real purpose. Like I said, it just feels like it's a shoehorned in aspect of it. But also, like you said, being 2024, it does paint a lot of these African American characters. In fact, it paints all African American characters in the film as like criminals, and that is problematic. Yeah, and then, like, Peter uses his telepathic powers to make Zero cut his throat. So now we know, like, Peter is aware that he can make people do what he wants them to do as well. And he uses it in a sinister way, not a way for good. So he leaves this grungy bar. He goes to Bernard's apartment building, climbs upstairs, where now Bernard is there. Bernard is a little bit more vocal this time around. He's still glowing. He still looks fucking ridiculous, but he does sense that you've grown since we've seen each other last. You've experienced it. And Bernard goes into this thing where he's like, human genes are recessive. In me, he says, Bernard, in me, human genes are recessive. So basically, my prominent genes are the alien genes, the God genes. In you, it's the opposite, which is why it has taken you much longer to realize what you are. And it's much harder for you to break your human traits because you have your human genes as being dominant. And so he proceeds to tell Peter, like, you were supposed to be like the one that was the prominent, was going to be the God. However, because they failed with you and it ended up being that your human genes were the dominant ones, they had to try again. And that's where they came up with me. This is so much, Roger. This is so much. Then he says, but you know what? I can bear your child now, and we can start a new species together. And this thing reminds me of the end of The Brood. Lifts up its gown, its dress, and it has that fucking giant vagina on its stomach.
We're not just talking a giant vagina. We get an extreme close-up.
The lips opening.
Extreme close-up of a throbbing clit. Like, I mean, there is, like, literally a clit, and it's pulsing, and you are like, what the fuck am I looking at? A lot's happened real fast. And I'm going to circle back to something you said at the beginning of this, because I think it's so evident now. This is a film that consistently chooses to tell instead of show. And one of the issues I have here is like now we're getting this absurd reveal with vaginal rib cages and so forth and so on. And there's just so many things that leading up to this point I think could have been visually depicted in so many different ways to really help the viewers understand what was happening leading up to this point. Things such as the character of Peter developing his powers. Yes, it seems out of nowhere now that Peter has understood his powers and has a full understanding of what he's doing. And I guess that's, this whole stabbing at the pool hall just moments before was supposed to be like our example of that. But like, they're trying to cram it into the final minutes of the movie. I needed to see that developing consistently over the course of the film. And it's not like you needed to have someone sit down and tell me about it. They could have shown that. They could have depicted that. They could have found ways to do that. But now we're stuck with this finale moment, last 10 minutes of the movie, that feels incredibly rushed. We're given that kill sequence in the pool hall. Now we're given this big old monologue from the golden boy who's just rambling on about their species and whatever, interesting concepts. But like, at this point, like it's being crammed into the final minutes of the film, and it's just too much. I want to see it. I want to see these things happen. I want something more visually exciting. This explosion that's going to happen here in a moment, it's great, but it's way too brief. The things I really want from it, I'm just not getting. I'm just getting words.
That's the film's downfall. So many ideas, so many cool concepts thrown at us. None of them explored. None of them really stick, to be honest with you. Like, why? So now Bernard wants to create a whole new species with Peter, and this pulsating clits, like, signaling to come and have some fun with it. And instead, Peter hauls off and like punches.
Oh my god, that gasp when he gets punched. He's such a gay man when he's like, oh, and he like looks back at him like, I can't believe you just hit me.
But then Peter, he's like, you've never felt pain, have you? So he realizes Bernard has never felt pain. So literally Roger proceeds to like beat the shit out of him and choke him. And I get like this Carrie-esque moment. I think this is what they were going for, where Bernard starts to unleash his telekinetic powers, causing the building, much like Carrie, the finale of Carrie, to start to collapse around them. He chokes out Bernard. He actually even pulls his gun and he's going to shoot Bernard, but a piece of rock from the ceiling falls, and the building like starts to collapse and catch fire. And Peter has to like really stumble his way out. He almost doesn't make it. And we get this shot of Bernard like laying on the ground as all these rocks and bricks are falling on him. He kind of gives this like really sorrowful, sad wave as Peter disappears from the building. And Peter like gets out just in time before the building just like literally explodes into flames. I mean, I want to reiterate this scene, this huge confrontation that we were building up to, probably 2 minutes of screen time.
Yeah, and barely any of it is this explosion, which at least when it happens, they try to make it a big moment. Like you see Bernard getting buried, he looks almost Christ-like. The way they have his hands positioned, everything, it looks very, very symbolic of Jesus, I feel. And it is very action-packed for a moment. But, you get this big old monologue. There's so much backstory. There's so much exposition. There's so much being explained all over the course of this movie. And they choose to end it on that same note. And, this is where it strays from, again, I'm going to compare this to something like Life Force. Like Life Force was a really big concept, but they made sure that movie was jam-packed with big moments, great effects, big shocks, and they were able to float through these big concepts with just a consistent, you're constantly just entertained and impressed by what they're doing. I really expected the same thing for this movie. I expected that big opening moment to carry through the whole film, but it just chooses to not do that.
I mean, I feel like 90% of the film's budget was spent on that opening scene. 5% of it was spent on this final moment. And then the rest was spent to pad the rest of the movie. Because if you think about the rest of the movie budget wise, probably wouldn't be that terrible because it's a lot of like rooms with one character and dialogue, minus the parade scene, which I really think they got permission to film during a parade for that particular scene. I mean, yeah. And that's what I meant. The film peaks with that opening scene, and it never reaches that again. And in fact, for me, it just goes down, 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 and then you get this very lackluster climax. These two characters could have had we could have had a battle. Fuck, they're both telekinetic. Why couldn't we had some sort of telekinetic battle? Like, fuck, that movie with Melissa Sue Anderson and like midnight offerings. Remember the final where she's a witch and there's this big telekinetic battle? Not that I wanted to see that, but like, come on, like we're building up. Entire film, Peter's trying to track down Bernard, find out who he is, and then we get this lackluster 2-minute confrontation where Peter easily beats the shit out of him and gets the best of him. I mean, I'm very let down. And then Roger, kind of a follow-up scene, which puzzled me. We see Peter he's been arrested and he's being led into the courthouse for the murder of Bernard Phillips. And these reporters like stop and ask him, like, how did you really go to that building that night with the intention of committing homicide? And he's like, yeah. The reporter's like, well, why? Why would you do that? He says, God told me to. And the reporter's like, I'm sorry, what? And Bernard looks right in the camera and says, God told me to. And we get that freeze on his stare. And then we see that he has been committed to the state hospital for the criminally insane. And that's how the movie ends.
Oof, what a bummer of an ending. Oh my God. And really for this poor character, like I was expecting a completely different outcome. That is not the note I was expecting it to end on.
But I mean, you can make a lot of inferences. He's smiling at the end because he knows he's going to be able to get out with his powers, right? I mean, if you're telekinetic and you can mind control people, you're going to be able to get out of anything. And I think that's why he was smirking. I mean, we got Bernard convincing people to kill their whole family. You can't tell me that Peter can't telepathically convince a judge to let him off, or someone in the insane asylum to let him out. Open the door and let him walk away. I mean, I think he's very well aware of his power and his stature now. But yes, definitely an ending that kind of is like, all right.
Well, there's a few interesting things that have, over the course of the film, building up things that were implied. One of the moments between the two women after he left, where Martha acknowledges, she's like, he has to go away now. And to me, I was like, oh, like he has to go away. Like he's going to go into space. Like I thought this was going there. I thought he was going to maybe have some big grand moment where he's sucked up into a spaceship. Telekinetic battles, absolutely, all day. I'm all for it. And instead, no, this ends on a monologue and a building collapse. And then this moment, and I'm like, oh, he's going away. He's just going to prison. Like maybe that's what he was implying this whole time. Maybe he's just at peace with it. I don't know. They really leave you hanging on this ending. And it really is, it's a film that at times I found immensely entertaining and often rather well constructed. But there's so many aspects of this film that I just would have done differently personally.
I mean, there's let's be honest, there's lots of interesting themes. And I think the film, for people that praise this film, it's because it touches on all these interesting themes. I really would have liked to seen the reaction of this film when it came out in 1976. How was the reaction, particularly of religious people? I know The Exorcist, had people up in arms, or Catholic Church up in arms. I'm wondering the reaction to this. Probably not as severe, just because the film doesn't really hammer any of the themes heavily. I mean, I kind of like the concept that it explores of God. If there is a God, if there is a Jesus, and he is able to convince people to do things, he's not going to convince them to do good things. He's actually going to convince them to do bad things, like kill. That's an interesting concept to me. Like a God that is truly doesn't necessarily have his people's best interest in mind, and instead he uses them for playthings and entertainment. Like here we have Bernard, who is supposed to be this godlike figure. Instead of using his power for good and to help people and to help society, what is he doing? He's having people kill their family, do these mass shootings for his own entertainment, and then them killing themselves. I mean, it's quite morbid when you think about it. And I think that's, a lot of people have issues with religion, issues with the Bible, and because of how in some instances in the Bible, God is almost like a villainous character, like him trying to convince Abraham to kill his child, which is brought up several times in this film. God is not all good. God has done some really shitty things. And I think this is an example of that being illustrated here, that if someone does have godlike powers, chances are, Roger, they're not going to use them for good.
Well, and honestly, I feel like one thing that this film does is it uses these acts of violence, and it in ways it like uses religion itself almost as a metaphor for itself. It uses these things, these actual horrible acts that God is convincing people to do. I think in a lot of ways it all comes back to that statement that the captain made about sometimes extremely religious people cause a lot of problems, and this whole idea of God talking to people and literally telling them go out and do these acts of murder. I think it also is touching on the idea that when you let religion get into people's heads in general, it really taints who they are and how they operate and the choices they made because they think they're doing these things for the betterment of their belief system, for the betterment of their God, because because they are instructed to, for whatever Bible or book or reference they go off of. And I think it really is shining a light on the fact of how brainwashed people can be when they are extremist, when they are sucked into these cult-like religions. And so I think it's really smart in what it's choosing to touch on, especially for that era. I think it's way ahead of its time. Way ahead of its time. But do I think that it's necessarily executed well? At times, but oftentimes no. I think oftentimes it is a little misguided, and it spread itself way too thin. It tackled a lot of ideas. It just went about handling them in the wrong way, and it didn't make for the most entertaining way. And that's why I say again, I would love to see a remake of this film. I think now, in the times that we're in, this is a very interesting concept. I would love to see how it would be handled.
I agree. I know people hate that word remake, but this, Roger, if this is a film that could use a remake, absolutely get a really good script writer in there that is going to take some of these themes, like one or two of these themes, and really expand them and really do a deep dive into them. And you could get a really interesting or really thought-provoking, horrifying film. Because yes, some of these themes are horrifying. You hit on them. The fact that people become extremists because of religion and because of what the scripture or whatever their deity they feel is telling them to do or telling them to act. People take it to the extreme. We see that and how the Bible is justified in so many people use the Bible to justify so many horrible things, or any book, any religious text. Let's just not single out the Bible, but like that's the problem with religion. And I feel like you could really make a good film remake of this film in the right hands, and I would love to see it. But yeah, I mean, I don't hate the film. It's just one, Roger, I don't think I'd ever watch again. Like, I have no desire to ever watch this again. Once was enough, or twice was enough for this podcast, but I would never find myself in a situation like, oh, I gotta watch God Told Me To. Nope. Sorry.
Imagine watching this film for just for the hell of it, light pleasures. No, this is a very heavy movie. It's very dry, and you've got to be in a certain mindset, I think, to sit down and watch this.
I told you it was a struggle for me to get through this the first time. I'm like, I was actually going to message you, Roger, and I've never done with any of the films we've covered. I was actually going to message you and be like, Roger, I don't know if I can do this. But I toughed it out, and I'm glad I did, because again, lots of good concepts, lots of the great acting. I mean, the dynamics between Sandy Dennis, the Casey character, and Peter loved it. But the first time I tried to watch it, I was like, "Fuck this." Second time was a little easier to swallow because I knew what to expect. So, guys, if you've seen this film, God Told Me To, what are your thoughts on it? How do you think it's hit the themes that it was probably trying to attempt to go for? We would love to hear your thoughts. We would also love a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, especially after I have to watch this movie and talk about it for 2 hours. But with that, Roger, I'm going to reveal next week's pick. I need a palate cleanser. Roger. I need something that is just brainless, ridiculous, 80s fun. And I'm going to put this out there now because this is probably going to be the most obscure film we've ever covered, and will probably be the most obscure film we ever cover. Are you ready for it, Roger?
I'm ready.
So, guys, we are covering a film that I saw on the video shelves back when I was a little kid, probably in the late 80s. I was probably 11 or 12 years old. I remember the video case cover, the VHS, of the family kind of posing for a family picture with the mother holding a bloody pickaxe. and we rented the film, and I absolutely fucking found it completely enjoyable, completely charming. It's so ridiculous. It's so low budget that I have to have Roger watch this. Guys, I know very few people have seen this film, so I'm putting it out there. We were covering a 1987 film called Epitaph. Roger, you've never seen it, right?
I've never seen this movie.
Okay. I cannot wait for you to see this fucking movie. I cannot wait. And if you've never seen this movie, guys, it is available on Tubi under the title Mommy's Epitaph. It was put out several years ago on a Troma DVD set, and it was put under the title Mommy's Epitaph. So that's kind of the title that is stuck with it. But I know it's super rare. But you know what? It's a movie I find fucking I just adore it for all the wrong reasons. So Roger, fucking you better saddle up because I cannot fucking wait to hear you talk about this film.
I know when Troy's excited for something, and there's a certain level of energy that comes over him that he rarely possesses, and I'm feeling it right now. I can't wait to watch this movie. You sound thrilled.
Because I have to hear what you're going to say about the Martha Mother character. That's our whole conversation is going to be about this broad. It's actually a very dark movie. It's actually very like it's low budget as fuck. There is a couple of really brutal death scenes, and the film itself, the subject matter is actually really fucking dark. But its low budget is just a hindrance to a lot of it. But just put it on, brainless popcorn fun. I don't think another podcast has ever covered it or ever will. That's how rare it is. But I'm rearing to go. I don't care. I've been wanting to talk about this film with you for years. So you guys, you better watch the film before we do the episode next week. It's on Tubi under Mommy's Epitaph, and enjoy.
And you better listen to Troy and go leave us one of them reviews. And I don't give a fuck if God tells you to. I'm telling you to. So go on, leave a little bit of love for us. We're holding off on it till after the episodes now. We're being thoughtful of you guys. So come on now, give us a little bit of love because we got some really good stuff coming. And after this fucking sour blanket of a movie, I am ready for something light and just fluffy and gross.
You're going to love it then. You're going to love it. Then we'll get back to more, mainstream titles, but I have to pick up Epitaph. After seeing this, I'm like, I'm doing it. Fucking going through with it. So watch it. Join us next week to hear our lively conversation, which I literally cannot wait for, Roger. It's probably going to be one of our most humorous conversations we'll ever have. But with that said, guys, yeah, we're telling you, leave us a 5-star review. Check out our Patreon. Join us next week for the very little scene, Epitaph.
Oh, I can't wait. Good night, everyone.
Good night.